If you're interested in seeing how I can take 4 bowls that have been rough turned and turn them into 4 beautiful salad bowls, please stay tuned and watch this video. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, as that will help grow my channel. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd appreciate that as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave those and I will respond. Again, thank you. So this week's video is going to be taking these 4 bowls that have been rough turned and turning them into a production set of salad bowls. If you haven't seen the first video, here is a link to see how these were roughed out in the first place. These bowls were in my kiln for 4 days and they have gone out of round. In particular, this one has gone out almost 1/4 of an inch. And that's going to be tight because I only have about a 1/2 inch wall thickness. So by the time I make it round and then clean it up, it's going to leave me with just 1/4 of an inch. The good news is the tenons really haven't gone out of round, so I'll be able to put those directly into the lathe and mount them on that. I won't have to clean them up. Now these bowls were roughed out, and I have 2 slightly larger ones and 2 slightly smaller ones, but basically the shape is set. There's not much I can do with these other than make them round at this point and then just finish sand them. So the first step is I always work the outside of the bowl first, and with this one I'm going to just start up at the rim and get it established. Now, I am pretty darn close. Like, I'm obviously making good contact here, 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 and I just leave it right here, but I'm back in here, so I'm pretty darn close, and I'm missing a little bit here. But I don't want to go any smaller than I have to, just because my walls will end up being thin. So just make it round, nothing more. I'll be stopping often just to tighten this up. I do not want it to move, especially after I've already started making it round. Carbide does a good job. Problem is it's hard to get a smooth surface because you're dealing with a small area. Whereas with the gouge, you ride the bevel, you can get a smoother, continuous shape. But I may just knock down the high spots with this a bit. So now I've finished going over the outside of the bowl with my carbide as well as my gouge. And now I'm just using my scraper. And the scraper just helps remove any fine lines that might be left on the surface. There, I'm happy with the shape. That's almost ready to sand. A little more work on the foot down here. I do have a small repair to do here. I typically don't like leaving the pith because that could crack. So I do have one small crack here. I will fix that. And this side looks good. There's very little of it in there. But it's going to be beautiful wood. It's got a beautiful Ambrosia Maple pattern to it. So it's going to be very nice. Going over this with my negative rake scraper, you can see it's cutting well. It's removing a lot of material, but the material coming off it is fine. If you've been following my channel on a regular basis, you'll know that anytime I'm dealing with spalted wood, so that's wood with these black grains in it, then any cracks or repairs I have to do, coffee is my go-to, just because the color matches very well with the natural colors in the wood. So for that, I'm just going to put a bit of CA glue in there. And a bit of coffee. And this is just regular coffee grounds. Fine grind. A little more CA glue. A little more coffee. And now I have it all over my fingers. Be there for the rest of the day. I think I'll leave that and I'll work on the inside and come back and finish that up. So here I'm working on the inside of the bowl. I start out with my carbide tool just because this is a bit out of round and it's easier with the carbide tool to get the cut established. The good news is I have a continuous rim, so that's thin enough. And I've got still a solid 1/4 inch for rim thickness, so that's plenty. I know there's a great debate in the turning world of carbide tools versus bowl gouge. I use whatever's working well at the time, and I find sometimes using the carbide to ride down the inside of the bowl works well. Here I've switched back to my gouge. In this case, it's cutting a little bit faster than the carbide tool is. So the first bowl is done, shaped. I need a couple spots. There's a little ridge right there. I'll take out a negative rake scraper, maybe a bit there. But generally it's shaped. The walls are even. The bottom is good. I've started the foot, which I'll clean up when I reverse it. Still a little more work to do just here where this crack was. Although I took a lot of it down, I just shortened the rim a little tiny bit. So I don't have much of a crack there now at all. So I'll finish that up. And then this bowl will be ready to start sanding, and then we have 3 more exactly like this to do. Here I'm just power sanding. I started out at 80 grit on the outside of this bowl and did both the inside and the outside at the same time. Then I just wiped off any residual sawdust, first with a rag, and then I use some denatured alcohol. I want to make sure that I get all the sawdust off the bowl. Now later on I'm going to use a tongue oil finish, which is a penetrating oil. So usually I don't do this step, but because this wood is a little soft, I did use a sanding sealer. It does a couple things. It helps stiffen the fibers up, which makes it easier to sand, and it's also going to raise any grain. I will end up sanding this off anyways, so it won't interfere with the tongue oil that I put on it later. If you follow my videos regularly, you'll know that I love spalted wood. This is actually Ambrosia Maple, which is just another name for spalted maple. It's not as common as spalted birch, but beautiful wood. Here's the inside, and you can see the knot that I ended up repairing. Again, the knot was there, and I put some coffee in it. Here I am on my 3rd bowl, and again working the inside with my carbide, and you can see the shavings that are coming off this. They're very large, it's cutting well, and you can see in this picture that I'm probably removing 1/8 of an inch at least with a single pass. Okay, here's bowl number 3. They're all sanded first coat at 80 grit. I used 80 grit because I had a bit of tear out. Normally I could start a little bit higher than that. But these are in good shape. They're ready to be sanded from 120 up to 400 and the finish applied. There is a small repair I have to do on this one, right there on the rim, which I'll use some coffee. So I have one more to go, 3 down and 1 to go. Since this is the 4th bowl that you've seen, I won't go ahead and show you everything or explain everything that I'm doing. But here in this case, just something I haven't mentioned, I stop frequently and just feel the bowl. Make sure that it's smooth, and then sand a bit, stop and feel it. Look for any imperfections. Okay, I just made a couple passes with my negative rake scraper, and that gave me a good surface. I don't have any tear out really to speak of, except for right here in this knot, and it's fairly deep. So I am not going to try and take the whole surface down to meet that. That's the only way to get rid of tear out. Tear out is going to be a divot. So you either take everything down to meet it, or you bring something up to fill it. Where it's in the knot, and I've got a crack right around it, I'm going to use coffee. I also have to fix this hole right here in the rim with coffee, as well as here. So I'm going to get started on that. The rest of the surface feels pretty good. No need of much more sanding on that. So this is a hole in the knot that I mentioned. So I'm just going to use some CA glue, put some of that in the hole, and then cover that with coffee. Usually what I do is I'll put the coffee in the glue, then press it down in, then add a little more glue to the coffee and repeat this process. It'll build it up. It'll make the repair solid, more solid than the original wood. And color is coffee is a great color match for the spalted wood. And yes, I am using my bare hands here. And yes, I do get coffee all over my fingers with super glue, which means it'll be there for the day. But I've tried using gloves, and to be honest with you, the glove just sticks to the glue worse than it does with your fingers, and the glove usually disintegrates. Now that guy there, I'm probably going to have to build up in a couple different layers because it was fairly deep. But it's looking pretty good, so we'll switch around to hollowing out the inside now. So I'm done shaping these with a tool. I've sanded them. I started at 80 grit, and I don't usually start that low. But I had some tear out, and I did end up sanding quite a bit without the lathe spinning and just doing it power sanding. Tear out was particularly bad on this because it is spalted, so it had some soft spots that tended to tear out. I used the sharpest tools as I could and did everything to try and minimize it, but I still had some to deal with. That's all been taken care of. Now I'm just going to sand it, power sand it from 120 up to 600, and then we'll get ready to apply the finish. And I'm going to do the same thing to all 4 bowls because all 4 bowls are at the same state. They're ready to be finished sanded. I love this part of the bowl making process where I get to put the finish on. For this bowl, I'm going to use tung oil because I want to use a penetrating oil because this bowl could be used with food. And I just apply with a rag, and I can either do this on the lathe or off the lathe. At this point, I just want to put a lot of tung oil on it. It's going to soak it up, especially where this wood is and has been a little soft. It will soak up a lot of oil. So at this point, I just rub it in a little bit, but then I'll put a little bit more excess on and leave it to soak, and then come back 12 to 24 hours later and wipe it clean. So now the finish has been applied to the bowl. So the first thing I want to do is cut the tenon off. So the first thing I do is square up the bottom of the bowl. And then once I do that, I use my parting tool to get in there and remove the tenon. Because this bowl is finished, I don't want to go all the way through the tenon and take the chance of it flying off the lathe, so I just finish it up with a saw. So here's the 4-bowl set of Ambrosia Maple. It turned out beautiful. The contrast between the dark and the lighter wood really shows up very nicely. I still have to engrave the logo on the bottom, but I was running out of time for the video, so I won't be showing that.